Hey everyone, how are you doing? It's Nico from Documenting Simple Living. To be honest, this week I've been pretty tired and a bit all over the place mentally. I usually have a rush of energy right after Christmas and through January, but this year I've noticed that I just don't. I still feel like hibernating. I just have noticed my energy levels are pretty low still, so I'm respecting that and just going a bit slower than I normally do. Today, I'm just going to take you through some of what I got up to in a day. I always start by cleaning up after breakfast, getting everything back in order and clean. I usually make a second coffee and have been putting in collagen to my cup and also creatine. I've been reading some scientific papers about how taking a certain dose of creatine can help with focus, and I have definitely felt those benefits myself, so I've been adding creatine to my coffee for a while now. But I just put both of those into my cup and then add some milk, froth them together, and then pour the coffee right over, and you don't even taste anything. You still get the benefits of the collagen for like skin and hair, and the protein that's in that as well, and then also from the creatine. I make bread a few times a week. I love sourdough. I have a sourdough starter and I've used it for years. But sometimes I need to make bread very quickly, and this day was one of those days. So I'm making a yeasted bread today. I have a bread recipe that I use multiple times a week to make our loaves of bread, but also bread rolls. It calls for 860 grams of flour, but I kind of split that between usually two different types of flour. So today I'm using spelt and all-purpose. Sometimes I split it between rye and all-purpose. I always like to have a little bit of all-purpose flour in my bread so it's a bit chewy and a bit fluffy. In the winter, I like to use more spelt and rye to make a heartier bread, versus in the summer, I usually make like flatbreads, that sort of thing. So there's more all-purpose flour in those. But today I'm using spelt and all-purpose, and I'm using about a little bit more than half spelt and the rest all-purpose. The bread needs a little bit of sugar for the yeast to eat, and so I'm putting in this little last bit of honey that we have. We're out of maple syrup. This is the last honey that we have, so I need to find more of that somewhere local. But I'm just going to dump this in. I'm going to add the yeast, a little bit of salt, and then 720 grams of water. And then I'll mix that up and let it sit on the counter for a bit. So I'm just going to mix this all together. I use the stretch and fold method for every bread product I make. I don't have a mixer, and I don't really want a mixer. It just takes up more counter space that we don't have a lot of. So I just put everything into the bowl together, kind of get it mixed together, and then cover it, come back to it in like 15 minutes, do a stretch and fold, stretch the dough on one side, fold it over, and do that on all four sides. And then leave it for another 20 minutes and then come back to it and do another round of stretch and folds. And I do that like 4 or 5 times. In this way, I'm not standing there kneading the dough for half an hour. I'm not having to have a mixer. I can just mix everything together and then come back and do a few stretch and folds, and then it's ready to bake. While that is sitting on the counter, I'm just going to quickly strain off 2 oils that you've seen before. The plantain oil that I made I think in October, and the comfrey oil that I also made at the same time. I'm going to strain these off finely and just have them ready to go in our pantry as infused oils. And then at a future time, when I have more time, I'll probably make a plantain salve sometime for the springtime when we start to get outside more and there are more scrapes and bruises and bumps and bug bites and that sort of thing, I'll want to have the plantain salve for then. But for now, just straining off the oil is enough. So I'm just going to strain it off using a colander into a clean jar. I'm just going to press out all the oil. I love the green color that both comfrey and plantain give the oil. It's so beautiful. I'm excited for this summer because we recently got a dehydrator. So I think we'll be able to dry a lot more herbs over the summer. Of course, a dehydrator is absolutely not necessary. And I didn't have one for, many years. Air drying your herbs or just using an oven on a very low temperature works great. But I'm excited to have the dehydrator because it gives me kind of hands-off time. When those herbs are drying, I can just leave them in there and not worry about kids getting into, all the herbs that are drying on the drying racks or have to be around the kitchen while they're in the oven. Dehydrating can take some of the nutrients out of the plant material, so I am aware of that. Freeze drying plants is the best way of preserving the nutrients and, benefits that are in the calendula flowers or in the plantain leaves. But the best thing you can do is just use what you have. So if that's a drying rack, use that, which is what I did for many years. If it's a dehydrator, use that. And if it's a freeze dryer, use that. For a few years now, I've had the goal of just slowly, over time, starting to expand my knowledge of what medicinal benefits the plants growing around us have, how to preserve them, how to use them, how to share them with the people around us, and how to share these skills online. And so for me, having a dehydrator is just one thing that can make the whole process a bit smoother, but by no means is it necessary. And you can really just get started learning some of these skills by going into the public park and learning how to use the dandelions or the rose hips that grow wild and for free there. I've got those strained off, and now I realize that I could also, while I have everything out to strain off oils, I could also strain off a calendula oil that I had in the pantry. I wanted to make a hair oil, and so just now that I have everything out, might as well strain off the calendula as well. I'm going to funnel it right into a glass jar that I will keep in the bathroom and use on my skin and hair. I think for this calendula oil, I had used fractionated coconut oil, so that's what's in that. It's a much lighter color oil, but you can still see the beautiful yellow that has come from the calendula flowers. For infused oils that I'll use on my body, I usually like to use jojoba oil if it'll be just an oil I use as an oil, or I like to use olive oil if it's an oil that I'll put into a salve. But fractionated coconut oil works great. Grapeseed oil is another option. Sweet almond oil is another good one. So you can just experiment with what works for you. The best one that I've found for me personally, for my skin, is jojoba oil. That's my default, but when I'm out of it, I'll use one of the other ones. I tend to stay away from olive oil if I'm just going to use the oil on my skin directly because it is quite thick and I don't like how it feels on my skin. However, if it's going to be in a salve, it's a really wonderful oil because of that thickness. It gives the salve a real rich texture, which is nice. Over on my website, documentingsimpleliving.com, I have tons of recipes for all of these things. Calendula oil, plantain salve, comfrey salve, calendula salve, and tons more. So make sure to head over to the website if you are looking to learn how to make any of those. Now, back to the bread. It has been many hours, and then after a few hours, I put it into the fridge just to slow down the dough from rising too quickly. I'm going to just dump it out and divide it into my bread roll sizes. I usually make a bunch of smaller rolls for my younger ones, and then I make some large rolls for the older ones. Our oven is broken at the moment, and so we've been using a little countertop oven for a while. You've probably noticed our kitchen is very much being renovated, but we are wanting to do things in the proper order. So while we get everything together that we need to redo floors and that sort of thing, we are just living in what we have, enjoying what we have, we figured that if the countertop oven is working fine, let's just keep using that. And then when we're ready to replace other things in the kitchen, we can just get a new oven. So this oven has worked great for everything that we need. I'm able to break these bread rolls really easily and they turn out great. The only downside that I've come across is that I obviously can't bake very many at a time because it's a small oven, and also it heats up quite quickly, so I have to just keep an eye on usually the first batch that I put in is fine, like normal timings, but then when I put in the second batch, they bake a lot faster because the oven's already hot, and so is the tray that goes in the oven. So there's been a learning curve. I've burned a few dozen bread rolls in the recent past, but beyond that, it has been working fine. Another thing I wanted to do today was to make a St. Brigid's cross. These are something that are made in advance of spring. They're sort of made to welcome springtime, and I had seen them about where we live, and I wanted to try making one. I had this basket, beautiful basket, that was handmade, but it is kind of falling apart. The top part of the spiral is coming loose. While I could fix it, I thought that the wooden material used to make the basket would make a great cross. So I decided to just trim it off of the basket. Also some embroidery thread over the end there so they don't keep unraveling. But I thought I could use the little pieces of wood to make one of these St. Brigid's crosses. So I cut them off there and then removed the fibers that were holding them together. Decided to soak them in water in the bathtub just to make them a bit more weavable. So I tied them together and then put them into the bathtub for about an hour and then dried them off a little bit and started to make this cross. This was actually my first time trying to make one of these, and it took me a minute or two to figure out how to do it, but once you know how to do it, it's so simple. To make it, you can use, like I'm using these little wooden strips that have been soaked in water. You can use willow that's a bit soft, so soaked in water or fresh. You can use long grasses. You can use the stalks of dandelions, pipe cleaners. Be creative. You can use what's around you already. What you want to do is put one piece down on a flat surface and then take a second piece and fold it in half around the first piece. So the two pieces are perpendicular to each other now, with one folded in half around the other, and then rotate it 90 degrees counterclockwise and repeat. So take a third piece, fold it in half around the piece that sticks out to the right, and then rotate it again 90 degrees counterclockwise and repeat. It's a little bit difficult to explain exactly how to make it clearly, but I will leave a link in the description to a blog post that I followed to make this just now, and they have like a visual pattern that you can use, and once you've done it once, it makes sense, so you can make it more quickly the next time. Soon you'll see this beautiful weaving shape emerge. It takes maybe about 8 turns for the cross to have some structure to it, so it can be a bit tricky at first just getting started, but if you keep folding and turning and folding and turning, eventually you'll get this strong middle, and then you can more easily weave the outer parts together. When I was happy with the size of the middle square, the middle weaving, I used some wool yarn to tie off the edges, so the edges were nice and tight and clean, and that way the cross doesn't unravel. I love how it turned out. I think it's just so beautiful to be able to make these things with natural materials. I ended up making two. This is one of the smaller ones I made, and then after I turned off the camera, I made a bigger one, and I'm going to kind of hang them, like the smaller one above the bigger one, and put it on our front door to welcome spring. I think we're all ready for some sunshine, warmer weather, and to start to see some green poking out of the ground again. That's what I wanted to share with you today. I will be back next week with another video, and I wish you a warm and restful week.